right. I would like to call to order our Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development MSPBD Committee meeting of the North County Transit District for March 5th, 2024. To start the meeting today, I will now ask Hannah King, our Deputy Clerk, to call the roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Contreras. I will now call the roll. Committee Member Contreras.
Present.
Committee Member Hinsey.
Here.
Committee Member Martinez.
Here.
Committee Member Robinson. This concludes the roll call.
All right. And Hannah, I'm going to need a little bit more info from you about safety. If you could provide the safety brief and review evacuation procedures for us, please.
Absolutely. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There's a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Hannah, do we have any general public comments today?
No, madam.
All right. Well, in that case, at this time, public registration to provide general public comment will end. We're going to move into our 3 items on the agenda today. Our deputy clerk will lead us through item 1, the election of the MSPBD committee chair and vice chair. And Hannah, do we have any public comments for this agenda item?
No, madam.
All right. So at this time, public registration to comment on this item has been closed. And I'm going to leave it up to the rest of the board to see if anybody has any recommendations or any questions about electing our chair and vice chair.
I would like to nominate Ms. Karina Contreras to continue serving as our chair. And I'm happy to serve as vice chair if that would be helpful. I know you're new as of this year. I am pregnant, and so I will be having a baby this summer. And so I think for the 2 meetings after that, I might be absent. So I might rely on somebody else to be the vice chair during that time. That's a motion.
All right. And we have board member Hinsey making a motion to nominate me as chair, Karina Contreras, and to nominate herself as vice chair. That motion has been seconded by board member Martinez, and I will call for a vote.
Okay, thank you. I'll now call the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion made by committee member Hinsey and seconded by committee member Contreras, by committee member Martinez to elect committee member Contreras as chair and committee member Hinsey as vice chair of the MSPBD committee passes.
And I just want to say I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to continue as chair of this committee. And do know that I always have an open door policy. So if there's anything that ever comes up and you want to see it on the agenda, let me know so that way we can have a really good, robust discussion here. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to our proposed calendar year for 2024. This is the committee work plan. Katie Persons, NCTD's Director of Service Planning, will review the next item regarding this work plan. Thank you, Katie.
Great. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So on the screen here and in your packets is the proposed calendar year 2024 work plan for the MSPBD committee. Today we've got, of course, the election of MSPBD committee chair and vice chair, as well as the work plan and an update on the FY 2025 service implementation plan. In the proposed June meeting, there is an update on the Breeze Speed and Reliability Study proposed, as well as an update on the Pronto Fare System enhancements. And then in October, there is a proposed update on the safety and security at the district, customer feedback trends and initiatives, marketing and communications program update, as well as an update on NCTD's NCTD Plus Microtransit implementation. So one question that we wanted to pose to the committee as they also consider this work plan was the kind of cadence and level of information that NCTD staff provides to the board on some of these items. So specifically, NCTD provides updates to the board on security and customer feedback via quarterly reports, and also provides quarterly service information or monthly customer service information via the monthly operations performance reports. So we wanted to check with the committee to see if this cadence is helpful with that level of information, or if you'd prefer an annual trend report or any other alternate opportunity. And with that.
I'll just say I do like receiving those updates quarterly because it allows us to make suggestions within the year that can be implemented almost as soon as we ask for them. So I notice a sense of responsiveness that if we make a comment, we get feedback on that comment, or we are able to implement a change quickly.
Great.
As a new member.
Awesome. So unanimous from us. The more updates, the better. I do agree that, especially as we're seeing NCTD kind of embark on different ways to connect folks, I think it's important for us to have a lot of feedback on, hey, what's working? Is there anything that's not working? And the sooner we can be on those trends, the better. And then we can make recommendations to the full board as well. So I really appreciate how thorough we've been. I do want to ask on the let's see, in June, the breeze speed and reliability study update. I've been waiting for this one. So, is this, in a meeting before at this committee, I kind of pushed on trying to get this information as soon as possible. Is this the soonest that we can receive the speed and reliability study update, or are we able to receive that even if it's not for, calling a special meeting, but just to be able to have that to review well ahead of that committee meeting? Because it's going to be a big study.
Yes. Yeah. I think June would be the best time to provide a presentation for that, and we'll bring our consultant to that meeting as well. We can definitely work through this committee to provide the actual documentation and the maps way ahead of time so that you have kind of that opportunity to digest that information.
I think that would be really helpful. So that way, when we, do have folks here that are going to give us the presentation and have in-depth knowledge about it, we can come if we have any questions from that study. So I just want to make sure that the board has enough time. We're so busy. We have thousands and thousands of pages that we read. So the sooner we can get that, the better, and we can understand. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And that was the end of that agenda item, right?
Yes.
All right, that was short and sweet. Let's see here. Do we have any public comments on this?
No, madam.
Perfect. So we'll go ahead and close the registration for public comment on this item. And any additional questions from the board members? All righty. So in that case, it's informational. So we can just move on to the next item, which is our final item now, right? The next item is for us to receive an update on the FYI 2025 service implementation plan. This item will also be provided by our fantastic Katie Persons. And if you can go ahead, we have all our attention on you.
Great, thank you. So today I'll walk through a bit of an overview of the service implementation plan, as well as the key assumptions we're proposing to inform that plan. So the service implementation plan, or SIP as we call it, is a 10-year document within the annual operating budget that provides service level assumptions for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as a 10-year outlook. Per the terms of the master MOU with SANDAG, both NCTD and MTS are required to submit a service implementation plan to help inform short-range planning for the region. Service levels are ultimately dependent on the availability of projected operating and capital revenues and budgeted expenses. And the SIP is also developed consistent with Board Policy 17, which states that ridership goals, revenues, and expenses are budgeted conservatively to ensure a balanced budget. Next slide. So we have varying levels of detail within the SIP depending on the time frame. The information within the SIP for fiscal year 2025 includes detailed monthly projections by mode. The detailed information helps to inform elements within the budget, such as fare revenue, projected fuel budgets, and other items. We also include monthly projections for the next 2 to 3 fiscal years, solely to inform service planning activities, so out through FY 2027. And those are refined each year as we approach the relevant fiscal year to more accurately incorporate funding projections and constraints. The SIP also includes annual modal projections out to FY 2035 or 34, which are also adjusted based upon relevant project timelines and again, subject to funding availability. Next slide. The document includes inputs such as hours, miles, and ridership to inform the budget. The information within the SIP is also a critical element of NCTD's monthly and annual transit operations performance reports, or toppers, and you'll see that in the form of ridership and efficiency goals that the topper benchmarks against. Next slide. So because the SIP informs the broader budget and our performance goals throughout the year, it's important that we are as accurate as possible in our projections. We don't yet have a crystal ball, but in the meantime, we have a few key documents that the planning team creates or uses to help inform our estimates and assumptions. So that includes our annual topper, the topper appendix, which includes route level analyses, as well as other analyses that are focused on specific modes like our microtransit suitability analysis that the board saw last month. Next slide. So I'll first walk through the assumptions that will inform the immediate next fiscal year, FY 2025, and then we'll talk about longer term assumptions to inform that 10-year plan. So the first assumption for FY 2025 is that our Breeze service levels will be fully restored from the April 2022 service levels. The second assumption is the launch of the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection Flex service, subject to board approval at the April Board of Directors meeting. The third assumption is a phased rollout of NCTD Plus microtransit zones. And finally, an investment in additional frequency on core Breeze routes as operator and vehicle availability allows. Next slide. So you might recall that Breeze service on select routes were previously reduced in April 2022 due to an operator shortage. Last year's SIP included phased restoration of Breeze service, which we followed with our service changes. So that includes restored frequency on Breeze 302 and 303 in October, and we're working to restore Breeze 332, 351, and 352 in the upcoming June service change. So this year's SIP will reflect that fully restored service level for Breeze. Next slide. The next item is the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection service. So we are currently soliciting public feedback on the proposed routing and will return to the board at the April meeting to close the public hearing and ask the board to vote on the service. For the SIP specifically, we're currently compiling the annual projections for the service to include in the SIP. And of course, we'll make any necessary changes based upon the results of that April board meeting. And this service, should it be approved, would be included within the SIP and the monthly toppers under the flex mode of service. At last month's board meeting, Nick and Chris provided an overview of the proposed rollout of NCTD Plus microtransit service. This proposed rollout includes the first zone beginning in June 2024 through June 2025, and a second zone beginning April 2025 through April 2026. So those two zones will be incorporated into the SIP's FY 2025 service levels. The other two zones and their proposed phasing spanned fiscal years 26 and 27. So those will be incorporated into our 3-year service level outlook and then updated in the following year's service implementation plan. Finally, now that we have that restored Breeze service, we want to look at where we can enhance frequencies on core Breeze routes, especially those that might be impacted by increased loads related to the Youth Opportunity Pass. Some of those impacted routes include the 350, 303, 332, and 305. The route level analysis appendix included in the annual topper is really critical for that exercise, as well as a host of operational data that we have. We're currently working with the operations and maintenance team to best project when we'll have available operators and vehicles to enhance those frequencies and where those investments can be made. Next slide. So the key assumptions we have on our longer term that inform the 10-year plan. These might look familiar from last year's SIP, so we'll walk through these. Next slide. Continuing with the same theme a few slides ago, we are proposing investment in breeze frequencies in FY 2026 and later fiscal years, subject to operating funding availability. In last year's SIP, targeted routes included the 303 in Oceanside and Vista and routes 351 and 352 in Escondido. We'll continue to refine targeted routes based upon ridership trends, public and board feedback, and other sources. And ultimately, these increases, or the proposed increases, would meet the threshold of a major service change and would be subject to board approval at a later date. But these projected increases help us to provide a framework for the SIP. On the coaster side, we're continuing to include the assumption that the coaster will extend to the Convention Center Coaster Station within fiscal year 2026. Padres season and events like Comic-Con provide a big ridership boost to the district. And with the expansion to Convention Center Station, folks will have that one-seat ride to Petco Park and Gaslamp. In October of 2021, NCTD expanded coaster frequencies from 22 daily weekday trips to 30 daily weekday trips and an additional round trip on Fridays, and expanded weekend frequency from 8 to 10 daily weekend trips to 20 daily weekend trips. This was a great service increase for the coaster, but there are still gaps that we'd like to fill. And we have preliminary schedules for 36 daily trips and 42 daily trips that we'd propose operating in phased fiscal years, subject to funding availability. NCTD continues to make progress on advancing the Sprinter signal modernization and double tracking efforts. For this SIP, we have frequency increases beginning in FY 2032 for the Sprinter, and that's subject to funding and project timelines, which we'll continue to refine in future SIPs. In terms of next steps, we'll continue to refine the inputs into the SIP based upon the feedback today and further analysis, and complete an interdepartmental review of the documents. The board will receive an update on the budget development process at the May Board of Directors meeting, and the board will ultimately be asked to approve the budget at the June Board of Directors meeting. And that concludes the presentation.
All right, thank you so much. And Hannah, do we have any public comments?
No, madam.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to close the public registration to comment on this item. And first, I'll look over to my board members here. Does anybody have any questions? Sure.
Just a question on the San Diego bridge replacement project. That's a state of good repair project, so it won't do anything to change our frequencies or travel time.
It is both a state of good repair and capacity enhancing project. Mary, correct me if I'm wrong. And it yields, I believe it's over a mile of double tracking capacity, and it's included in the assumptions that were in the LoSAN optimization study and the freight pathing study that would allow us to expand those frequencies to 36 and 42 trips.
Awesome, that's great to hear. Are we still waiting on funding for that?
We are.
So it's a complicated answer. So we, in January, we received 53 million from the Department of Transportation. That funds the bridge piece. We have an additional 100 million from the state of California. And we have 2 formula funding requests from the state of California ITIP and the state of California SB 125. I can't imagine that the state would not approve our request. We conferred with them prior to submitting, but we are still pending those 2 last funding pieces.
Yeah, we always are getting positive news, and it's significant amounts of money every time. So if we do receive the formula funding, then we will be fully funded for that project.
Yes. Yeah.
And remind me again when we would start construction on that ideally?
Another complicated answer. So there are 2 phases to the San Diego project. The San Diego Phase 1 project is finalizing its design, and its construction has to begin before the Phase 2 construction can happen, which is some additional double tracking, the bridge replacement, and the platform. So I think the target is early 2026 for Phase 2, but is contingent on when construction for Phase 1 is completed.
Okay, so it puts us just outside this planning window horizon. All right, thank you.
Awesome. I have a few questions. One question that just came to mind when it comes to the NCTD Plus Microtransit, since we're going to be using our flex vehicles, and I haven't asked this question before, so I'm just curious. Are these vehicles able to use any kind of bus only bus priority signals or queue jumps? I know that that doesn't exist yet, but in the future, for cities that actually want to come on board with this, are those modes of transportation able to utilize those?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We would imagine that any NCTD revenue vehicle would be able to use those features or treatments.
Okay, awesome. That's really good to know. I heard the 303 and this is my bus.
Yes.
So, and I'll tell you, if I try to get on it right now after this meeting,
Oh, yeah.
I'm standing in a line that is really long.
Mhm.
I love seeing our youth utilizing this,
Mhm.
but the frequency that we have, even being able to restore it,
Yeah.
right? It's just not enough,
Mhm.
especially for the school tripper times,
Yeah.
right? And it could be very, very difficult to utilize the bus,
Mhm.
which, I love seeing everybody using the bus,
Mhm.
but having that frequency during the school tripper hours is going to be critical. So I just want to plug that in because I see it used a lot.
Yeah.
And it is one of the routes that it connects so many different places, right? And then you have off the 76, you have like the Walmart shopping center, and there's a lot of activity there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do on the 303. I think there's a lot of potential for that bus route. The other thing I wanted to say is a while ago, we were looking at a flat rate for the coaster. Where is that at?
That was included, yes, in the NCTD ridership strategy that Deloitte had helped put together for us. I believe there have been some initial conversations about what modifying the zone structure would look like for NCTD. And there were some initial financial analyses that were conducted, but a few more that need to be completed before we can kind of move into the next decision-making phase for that. But yes, that was included in the Deloitte study and is
Okay,
something
so
that
we're
we've
just
done.
kind of waiting on a little bit more analysis. I know that financially, right? I mean, the coaster brings in a significant amount of revenue. So adjusting any kind of fee is going to could potentially have an enormous effect on our budget. But the one thing that I want to say is if you look at the monthly pass and you want to go anywhere, right? In San Diego County, you have to get the NCTD monthly pass that has the coaster and, all the way to region or zone 3, right? But that's $182 a month. So I'm just wondering, as we're looking at budgeting, I'm just curious, like if we end up moving to a flat rate, does that change the monthly amount for the pass to kind of go lower? I just feel like $182 a month. I understand like that we need funding to be able to operate all this, and we don't have a good source of dedicated revenue for operations. But I feel like it's kind of a high point, if you want to go all the way to San Diego or the convention center when we end up doing that. So I just want to bring that to everybody's attention because I think it's a significant amount of money, especially looking at our ridership in general and where folks fall in area median income. That could be a really significant portion of someone's income if they're having to go to San Diego, right? So anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Any other questions, comments? All right. So believe it or not, we are pretty much done with our meeting. This was informational, so we don't need a vote. And our next scheduled meeting is our regular board meeting, March 21st, 2024 at 2 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.